Light of love, universal wisdom, shine your love on us. Beautiful souls, unity in love, spirit and angels watching over us. Hello, welcome to Mystic Mindfulness. I'm Christine. Thank you for joining me today. I'm in a different location than I typically am. My daughter's here, so she's taken the room for right now, and I am here. So thank you for being here with me. Today I wanted to talk about some of my personal experiences that are unexplained, the paranormal and the metaphysical, things that have happened to me or things that I've experienced personally, and just kind of discuss those. So, I know that this experience happened when I was about a year old, and I obviously wouldn't remember that. But my family, and this is interesting because the first time I heard about it, I was in high school, and my mom and my brother and sister and I were sitting around the dinner table, and I don't know how it even got brought up, but this conversation took place and they all collaborated, and this is what happened. So, again, I remember this story being told when I was in high school, so there might be some details that are a little off. I might not recollect the details exactly. The ones that I am absolutely certain about, I will say I'm absolutely certain that this happened because they all collaborated on this, and my memory of this is accurate. So, we had moved from Tillamook to California. My dad was involved in the church deeply in Tillamook, and they were building a new church in California, so we moved with the church. And we were living with a family group down there until we could find our own place to live. And in this house where we were staying with this family, my brother was sharing a room with their son. Suzette and I were sharing a room. My sister, sorry. My sister and I were sharing a room. I just figured you'd know who she was because I feel like your family. Thank you for watching. And then, obviously, my mom and dad had their own room. It was a big house, from what I understand. And my mom said that Suzette, my sister, started crying first, and she was 3, and I was a year old. She started crying first, and when my mom walked in to find out why she was crying, she had said that someone had pulled her hair. And then I started crying, and I couldn't explain. Obviously, I was a year old. I couldn't explain why I was crying. And my brother had said that he had seen a dark shadow of a figure, like a human figure, but it was a dark shadow walking down the hall. He could see it on the wall as it passed by the bedroom. He was sleeping on the floor, and he froze because it scared him so much. My mom had said that shutters, I believe, would open and close in the home. I believe, and this is the part I'm not sure if I recollect accurately, the following morning, after the incident where there was a dark shadow moving down the hall, and he could see that on the wall, the shadow of it on the wall, and then my sister started crying, and then I started crying the next morning. If I'm not mistaken, I think my mom had said that the chickens outside had died. So just very weird, bizarre stuff that would happen in that home. That was the first personal experience that I had, although I don't remember it. In California, I was probably around the age of 6. I don't know why I started doing this or what had prompted me to do this, but I started having conversations with Ghosty, and it could have been just my imagination, but some of the things that I would come up with were a little bit more than just an imagination from a kid's perspective. Like, I mean, from me, I'm saying this. You might look at it and go, "Yeah, well, that sounds like a thing a typical kid would do." It wasn't. For me personally, I didn't think of it was a typical thing that I would do as a kid. I had a friend that I would go and play with, and so I had this thing that I would call Ghosty, and I didn't see Ghosty. I didn't have any visions of Ghosty, but I would talk to Ghosty. And one of the things that I remember was going over to my friend's house, and she was 3 years younger than me. And I had told her that Ghosty had told me that even if she felt like her dad didn't love her, and I didn't know anything about their history at all. I still don't know any of their history, but I had told her, if your dad disciplines you and makes you feel sad, that Ghosty wanted me to tell you that he loves you very much and he's not intending to hurt you. And I also remember when I would play with my best friend, there was a time she was going through a lot of troubles in her home, and she would tell me about the things that would happen in her home. And I remember just sitting on the grass with her one day, and I had said to her, I just need to let you know that Jesus loves you. I felt it so deeply that I needed to let her know that Jesus loved her. So there's just some things that for a 6-year-old kid that were out of the norm from my perspective. Let's see, then I'm looking at my diary again for my notes. Oh yes, so then I was about that same age in California, and I would have dreams that didn't feel like dreams. They felt like they were very real. I remember going to a zoo in one of my dreams and just being able to fly over the zoo and look down on all the animals and feel like I was a part of these animals, like very much with them. I also remember coming back into my room, and running along the floor, the carpet, and then jumping up onto the wall, running up the wall and doing these large flips, like what you see in the movies now, but obviously, anyway, but I hadn't seen, so this is in the 70s. The movies in the 90s where people were running and then jumping on walls, doing their, martial arts and stuff. I wasn't even familiar with martial arts back then. I didn't even know anything about martial arts. We didn't watch TV growing up either. So I had come back into my room after visiting the zoo, and I would run and jump onto the wall and do these massive flips. And I woke up from this dream absolutely knowing for a fact that I could do this great trick. And I laid in bed for a little bit, and I could hear my mom and sister in the room next to me. They were talking, and that was my parents' room. And so I walked in there, and my mom and sister were making my mom's bed, and they were chatting away. And I had told them, I said, I can run up the wall and do these backflips. It's so cool. You guys have to come and see. And my sister said, you can't do that. And the way she had said it was in such sarcastic, just almost disdain, like, you, you're nuts. But I really wanted to prove it to them, and my sister was not in any way going to even entertain the possibility that I could do this. So I went back into my room and tried it, and I couldn't do it, and I was so disappointed because I knew for a fact that I was able to do this. And what I know now is that I had had this out of body experience, astral projection, um, whatever you want to call it. I had experienced this out of body. So I didn't know anything about astral projection until about my junior year, when one of my best friends then had said that she had heard about it and had wanted to try it. So that was when the dots, I guess, probably started connecting for me, like, oh, that's what I had. I had one of those. Let's see. The next time that I had something like this, a paranormal or a metaphysical or something, whatever you want to call it, I don't know. It was 1989, my sophomore year of high school. It was on a Wednesday. It was in October. And I know it was a Wednesday because my family was getting ready for church. And about an hour before they left for church, and I had to stay home, I had math homework. And about an hour before my family left for church, I got a really, really sick feeling in the pit of my stomach. And I told my mom and my sister both, they were in the kitchen. I said, I don't feel like I should be home alone tonight. And my sister laughed at me and she said, that's just because you don't want to do your math homework. And I was like, no, I'm really serious. I don't feel like I should be home tonight. And it was probably around 7 o'clock. They had left for church, and about 7 o'clock, I'm sitting at a kitchen bar with my back towards a huge front window. The blinds are open, the lights are on, and it's dark outside because it's October, 7 o'clock-ish on this night. And I had a little dog. His name is Perk. He was a Sheltie poodle mix, collie mix. And I'm so deeply involved in my math homework, just trying to, I wasn't good at math, and I was really trying to understand it. And so I was engrossed deeply in this math problems, and wasn't paying attention to anything going on around me at all. But my dog Perk was sitting in a chair, or laying, he was sound asleep in the chair behind me off to my right, and against a wall. And he stood up and started snarling. His teeth were, I don't know what you call, like, he had bared his teeth, and you could see the gums and everything from his mouth. He's just angry. The hair on the back of his neck was standing straight up, and he started barking, and it was so loud I couldn't hear what could be going on around me. And so I grabbed his snout and I held it, and I could hear the front door. And the front door had the panes in the top of it, and solid wood below, and it had one of those handles that were curved like this, with a, I don't know what you call the clicker thingy was at the top of that curved handle, and I could hear it clicking. We had a deadbolt, but I could hear that clicking. And I stood up against the wall, just where the dog's chair was. I just stood there, braced myself, and tried to calm down. And I thought, okay, well, what could this be? And we had a cat, and the cat did know how to open doors. And I thought maybe it wasn't the front door, maybe it was the bathroom door, one of the doors, and the cat is just trying to come in through one of the indoor doors, the inside doors. And I got up the courage to leave that area and walk through the house to see if the cat would be trying to open a door somewhere. And the cat was sound asleep on the mantelpiece in another room, just sound asleep. And from that location, I could have walked into that room, looked out another window and seen the front door, but I couldn't bring myself to come eye to eye with whoever was out there. And I came back into the living room and my dog was still barking, and I just started pacing the floor and praying. And I was charismatic growing up, and I had been given the gift of tongues, and so I was screaming in tongues, praying this language. And I don't know if God came to my rescue or if the guy or whoever was out there, I'm sure it was a guy. Whoever was out there, I scared them because I was acting like a crazy person. I don't know. I'm not sure. Let's see, there's another story too. Oh yeah, I've missed some stories. Okay, so that was in high school, but prior to that, in 1982, my dad was still living at home with us, and I would have been third or fourth grade, probably fourth grade. And my brother and my sister and I were playing downstairs in the basement that we had. And my dad and mom were upstairs, and my dad got super excited. I mean, I could hear him from the landing. We lived in a split level home, and I could hear him on the landing calling out to us kids, "Come on, get up here." And he was like really excited. Like it wasn't like he wasn't scared. He was just really excited. And so the three of us kids ran upstairs as fast as we could to the landing, and he said, "There's a UFO outside." And so we all stepped out onto the front porch, and in the distance we could see this orange glow. I mean, and I'm giving like, because it's far, far away. It's over the hillside of where we were at. I don't know, far away. And so, if you guys were familiar with my area and I could explain to you where I was at and all that, then it would be so much easier. But I don't know how many miles away this flying orb would have been in comparison to us at that time. And this flying orb was doing some very weird sporadic things, like dropping down with like very fast, drop down, jump back up, drop down, zoom across the sky, zoom back, drop down, up. It was something that faster than a helicopter could drop. It was faster than any object that Earth could have done. And then it came at us, and within seconds this thing was across the street and disappeared behind some trees in my best friend's backyard. And I went to school the next day and told her, and she said, "Oh yeah, I saw that the day before." I was like, so weird. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm just gonna have to bring this up with my class. So in class I said, "I saw a UFO last night," and everybody started laughing at me, but I was so serious. Like I just I didn't know, I wanted people to believe me, and it was so strange. And the teacher, I trusted my teacher, and I wanted, my teacher to help me figure out what was going on. But it was the strangest thing. And now, of course, today we know that UFO orbs and things like that actually exist. So, but back then they were things that you really didn't talk about or know anything about. So, yeah, that happened. And then after my dad had left, Um, my mom and brother and my sister and I, we would sit around in the living room, and my brother would play guitar and we would sing worship songs. And at night, after we went to bed, my mom had mentioned this first, but I also remember this. At night, I had to get up and go to the bathroom. There would be this glow of blue, pure blue light in the house. It brought peace and it was comforting. And I remember that on one specific night, but then I didn't bring it up. My mom had brought it up that she had seen this blue glow of light. And I collaborated with that. I remember I had been telling the kids in my street, because at this time, if you look back at my other videos, I was talking about how I had had a personal experience where I had encountered God's love so deeply that I couldn't contain it. And I had to share that with the neighborhood kids. And this particular, these couple of people I knew from the year previous, they were pretty close friends the year previous, but at this time, they weren't that close to me. But I was on the bus going to school, and these two girls were in front of me on the bus, and one of them had turned around and she said, "Are you guys witches?" And I said, "No, why?" She said, "Because I saw blue flames coming off the top of your house last night." And another kind of paranormal experience that she had witnessed, along with that blue light that had come into the house, the two of those things together made me wonder if she'd actually seen that as blue flames. And I thought that she was just mocking me, making fun of me, but she looked pretty serious. The fact that she would even ask if we were witches was weird. But anyway, that also had happened during and around that same time. Within that time frame, and I wanted to get into, I had that, ghosty that I would, communicate with. But even then, when I was 6 years old, it felt like my own voice was talking to me, but it was telling me things that were a little more mature than my 6-year-old brain would, come up with. But in the 5th grade, when I had read my Bible for the first time and had encountered the love of God so deep, it was at that point where I started to have communication with God or Jesus. And it was a deep inner knowing, but it was also not, when I would hear things, I knew that it wasn't coming from me. It didn't even sound like me. It sounded like it wasn't a sound. It was a deep peace with words, but the words were, how am I going to explain this? I could think words. That's what it was. It was like thinking words, but it didn't feel like it was coming from me at all. Like it was a conversation between two different people, me and someone else. And I would know when to do things, such as starting up this group, telling the kids on my street, my neighborhood street, about the love of God. I knew I was supposed to do that. And that didn't come from me. That was just a deep knowing with words that I could feel. I would go into a place of calm, and I would wait to listen and to hear before I did things. And this is an example of one of those times. Um, the two girls that I had mentioned earlier on the school bus, one of them lived in my neighborhood, and she was a year older than me, and I didn't invite her to the club to tell her about the love of God. She was older, and she was just in a different place in her life than where I was at, and we had hung out the year before, but this year I was in a completely different space in my life, and so I wasn't really hanging out with her too much. And she had started a rumor in the neighborhood that caused a division within the neighborhood. And so I had quit telling the kids about God and about Jesus. I was deeply wounded and hurt, and I quit doing that. And she had come up to me, and everybody in the neighborhood, and the parents and older siblings of these younger kids, were very upset with her for doing this. And she had come up to me at the bus stop when all of these older siblings were there, of these younger kids. The younger kids were there and the older siblings were there, and we were all waiting for this bus. And she had come over to me and she had asked for forgiveness. She said, "I'm really sorry for what I've done. Will you please forgive me?" And I looked at her and I said, "Yes, I will forgive you." And one of the boys, an older sibling of the young kid that I had been telling about the love of Jesus, got upset with me. He says, "I can't believe you would do that. Why would you even do that?" And I had said to the group there, because I could see that they were all very upset with me for forgiving her, and I said, "The Bible says to forgive one another as God, for Christ's sake, has forgiven you. And we are to love one another, and we are to forgive each other. And I have forgiven her." And the softness that came over them, and especially him, he wasn't angry anymore. He just had this very soft look on his face, and nobody said anything after that. I remember the first day of school during that time too, 6th grade. My first day, it must have been of 6th grade. I remember when these young kids, they had just started into 1st grade, and this one young kid that I had been telling about the love of God to had dropped a huge grocery bag of items that she was supposed to be taking to school, like colored pencils and glue and all these things, and it had fallen, the bag had ripped and fallen all over the ground. And the bus driver was just sitting there waiting for this little girl, and she started to cry. This little girl was crying and just really upset, and I'm watching this, and it was the moment between ego, what people are going to think of me, and doing the right thing. And I, at one point, and I'm trying to remember the timeline, because I know when I started that school, I was one of the popular kids, and I was very much ego attached. And here I am now, struggling between being popular or giving it up completely and just doing the right thing for the right thing. And I struggled with that, and I got up out of my seat on the bus and went down, helped her pick up all of her things, and sat with her on the bus. And that was a spiritual experience for me, that I knew what to do, and had to let go of those attachments. And I would listen to the voice. Some of it was an internal knowing, and then other times it would be a hearing, and just following what I was being told to do, out of love. I mean, I wasn't ever told to do anything weird. It was definitely helping people out. Let's see. I had communication with what I believe was God during that time, where I would It was a relationship, and that relationship were experiences where I knew what I was supposed to do and I would follow through with it. Like starting up the club, I would call it, I guess, because I organized this little group of young kids and was telling them about loving each other and forgiving each other and treating each other like we wanted to be treated. And then when somebody would be upset with me or angry with me, I would listen, and I could hear the words come through as to what I was supposed to say to whoever was mad at me or upset with me or trying to create conflict. So it felt very personal to me, these experiences that I had. One time we did end up going to an Assembly of God church, my mom and the three of us, after my dad had left. And the church was toxic, like I had said in a previous video. And this one particular time, one of the ladies that was running, it was missionettes. I was involved in missionettes, and she had been upset because I'm 6th grade, I'm 13, and I could have been 7th grade at the time, actually, and it was a mixed group of kids. So there were kindergartners in there, and then there was me, and I was the oldest in the group, and she had coloring books and expected me to color. And I had left that school that I had been attending, where the orb and then the blue light and then the kids in the neighborhood. I had left that school and went to a different school. But on this particular day, there was a girl that had attended the missionettes, and she had gone to my old school, and she and I were catching up on things that were going on. And she and I sat in a corner, and we weren't coloring. We were just chatting about, life and what we were doing and things. Well, this missionettes leader got mad at me and told my mom the following day or whatever that I was rebellious and I wasn't following the rules and I wasn't coloring. I'm 13. It wasn't rebellion. I was sitting and chatting. I was having a relationship with a friend of mine. And so that Sunday, my mom pulled me out of Sunday school, and my Sunday school class was in the back of a room where the youth group, so you had to walk through the youth group where they were meeting to get to the Sunday school room. And my mom had pulled me out of that room, past the high school students, walked me into the foyer of the church, and this particular lady was standing there, and this lady was chewing me out in front of my mom, and my mom ended up spanking me in the foyer of the church, and then told me to march myself back into my Sunday school room. I had to walk past all the high school, junior high kids crying, tears in my eyes. I'm 13. It was very shaming for me. And on the way home from church that day, we walked because my mom didn't drive and my dad had left. So that was our only way to get around at the time, was, walking everywhere. And I was walking home, and I heard internally, you need to forgive your mom. You need to forgive your mom. And I, for that one moment, felt the ability to forgive, and I felt the peace come over me as I started to think about forgiving my mom. And then my internal voice took over and said, I am not going to forgive her for this. She did wrong. I will not forgive her. And at that point, my inner world became dark, and it was like a veil had come over my internal eyes, and things became very oppressive, dark. I actually went through a deep depression from that time on until about the 8th grade when we started going to a charismatic church. And I've probably told that story where I was very depressed for those years, 6th grade through 8th grade, and often wanted to just commit suicide and had contemplated how I would do that. I didn't have the courage to, but I know that I was very much thinking about it. And the guest speaker at that time had called kids who came from divorced families. And we got up in front of the church and we were standing in a line, and he stopped in front of me. He'd been praying. There were people on my left and he had kids my age, and he'd been praying over them. And then he came to me and he stopped. And he had said to me in my ear, he said, and I'm not going to be able to say the exact words that he said, but it was to the extent that I know that you have wanted to end your life, or God has told me that you have wanted to end your life, but he has a plan and a purpose for your life, and he isn't through with you yet. You have work to do. And he prayed over me, and I felt a huge release of dark energy leave me. And that was the moment where I could experience the love of God again. Like I could feel peace and joy and love, deep love once again. And so that was the other thing where this guest speaker had a knowing, like a psychic knowing, that he knew about me. I didn't tell anybody these things. Nobody knew this about me. I was new to the church as well. So nobody knew these things about me.